Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. We all remember November 15th, 2017, when we all were woken up in the small hours of the morning to be reminded of the military coup. I'll just play a short clip of the video just to remind us all what happened.
The Zimbabwe Defense Forces, Comrade R.G. Mugabe and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice. As soon as we have accomplished our mission, we expect that the situation will return to normalcy. To the civil servants, as you are aware, there is a plan by the same individuals to influence the current purging which is taking place in the political sphere to the civil service. We are against that act of injustice, and we intend to protect everyone of you against that. To the judiciary, the measures underway are intended to ensure that, as an independent arm of the state, you are able to exercise your independent authority without fear
or favor. It is laughable that these individuals staged a military coup and then the audacity to claim this was not a military coup, but a military assisted transition. And the real big surprise is they actually believed their own lies.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I agree with you. It is kind of laughable and actually sad that, it's the army of Zimbabwe that would actually, go live in front of the whole world to say, such idiotic lies and expect people to believe that. First of all, you look at what happened, and the first thing that comes to my mind is they had an agenda that they couldn't say immediately, but they had their person in place. They had their position marked out to say we are simply removing Mugabe, through a coup, and putting Mnangagwa through that coup. Period. They can, try and fancy talk it, water it down, but the world did not buy it. And the world called it as it is. There was a military coup in Zimbabwe. And they reported on that. It was something that was planned. The coup was planned using the army by certain individuals that already knew that they had their positions earmarked for themselves. That is it.
Yeah, what I find also interesting in this one is that these are the same individuals who had kept Mugabe in power for the 37 years. And it's not as if they didn't know what was happening. They were the ones who were behind the Kukura Wundi of 1983 to 1987. The primary purpose of the Kukurahundi was to force then ZAPU to give up its ambition as an independent political party, because they were the only party that really posed a serious challenge to ZANU-PF, its hold on power, and force the late Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his colleagues to give up and sign the 1987 Unit Accords, paving the way for the creation and imposition of the de facto one-party state that has ruled Zimbabwe. The same individuals, Mnangagwa, Chiwenga, and those in the army and police and CIO were behind the electoral coup of 2008, where ZANU-PF had clearly lost. But they stepped in, stopped ZEC declaring the results, went on to change the results in favor of ZANU-PF. They had been rigging elections all along. And now they want to pretend that they are the very impersonation of virtue. They're stepping in to stop the economic meltdown and the economic collapse and the political chaos, when in reality, they are the ones who created it.
Here is the phrase that they loved to use. They said they are targeting the criminals surrounding the president. That was the real reason for this, coup, or how they say it, a military assisted transition. My question now is, we have the Gold Mafia documentary. We have ZANU-PF themselves saying that they are losing over 2 billion of gold that is being smuggled out of the country. They agree with that. We have tenders that are being given to shady characters, and this has been even brought to their attention by reputable institutions in South Africa, big banks, that have warned them to say this is what is happening. We have a corrupt ZEC, officials that have been implicated in that. Now, my question to the army is, are these not criminals that are surrounding the president? And why are you not doing anything about it? And the answer is, it was never about protecting the Constitution. It was never about the criminals surrounding the president. Because if there is such a thing, I think Mugabe was better, he was better surrounded by the thieves that he had than the ones that we are seeing now. These ones are actually stealing blind, and they are really taking, the looting is just in overdrive, if we can say. But the army is quiet about that. It was never about that. It was about, we have our person that we have earmarked for ourselves, that we think would be good for us, and will let us do as we please. And this is Mnangagwa, and they have run with him, and they have stuck with him despite all the evidence that has been brought forward of corruption, of different types of very, very evil schemes that are happening. It's pretty sad. And like I said before, it's shallow that they would want the world to believe such nonsense. And unfortunately for them, nobody is buying it.
Well, one of the things that Mnangagwa promised, or two of the key things that he promised after the takeover in 2017, is that there will be free, fair, and credible elections, and they will stamp out corruption. If the truth be said, he has failed in both areas. One of the key requirements for a healthy and functioning democracy is that you must have a free media, freedom of expression. Indeed, the media is absolutely important because its most important function is to educate and inform the electorate. And yet, here is Mnangagwa's view on free media.
Under my leadership, the media will continue to be our cornerstone for promoting unity, peace, social cohesion, harmony, and the love for our country. Anything besides this, Chibakera Mziso.
So, in other words, what they are saying is you are supposed to report what they want to hear and not the truth. I mean, this is evidence. We had Blessed Mhlanga, who was arrested for an interview that exposed what was really happening. We have had individuals that have stood up and spoken out that have been, violated. Some have even disappeared. Some were actually killed, and this came to light. My question again would be to the army to say, you promised to serve and to preserve the constitution of Zimbabwe. And during the military coup, you said that was the reason. We are seeing the same reason and now, and it's even more clearer than before. And yet the army still remains quiet. This just simply just says it wasn't all about the constitution, the protecting of the constitution of Zimbabwe. It was for their own personal gain. They had their candidate, they had their person in mind, and they assisted that person to take over, the presidency using a coup. It's just that simple. So they can try and sell it the way they want, but unfortunately, like I said, the world is not buying it.
Well, the other key players in the 2017 military coup was the opposition. When some of Mnangagwa's people told Changirai and company that ZANU-PF or the military coup would form a government of national unity, they jumped on the bandwagon and endorsed the military coup. Morgan Changirai left his bed. He was in South Africa at the time. Left his bed, hospital bed, in a huff because he wanted to be part of this new GNU. Unfortunately, as soon as the people had made the mistake of endorsing the military coup in the form of coming out in the street to show their support of the military coup. And they forced Mugabe to submit his resignation letter. ZANU-PF turned around and said this was a ZANU-PF affair, nothing to do with the opposition. There was never any GNU. So one has to ask, why did the opposition support it? They supported it out of greed, pure and simple. Yes, as much as people wanted Mugabe out after 37 years in power, the reality is the military coup was not the answer. What they were proposing here was replacing one dictator with another. The solution was to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship, not to replace one dictator with another. In my view, this is the reason why most people have failed to come out in support of the so-called blessed Geza revolution. Because Geza himself made it very clear that they wanted Mnangagwa out so that they could replace him with Chiwenga. As much as I want Mnangagwa out, I don't want Chiwenga, because that is just replacing one dictator with another. We must at least learn from the mistake of 2017. We can't keep on repeating the same mistakes. What we want is to remove the dictatorship, to end the dictatorship, and replace it with a healthy and functioning democracy. The opposition have failed to implement even one token reform after 25 years on the political stage. And ever since the 2008 to 2018 GNU debacle, they have participated in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they are flawed, out of greed. This message must be sent to our opposition leaders loudly and very clearly. And their supporters must understand that too.
In conclusion, I would want to say there was never a military transition that was there. It was a coup. There was somebody that was, put forward, or actually, offloaded on top of the people as the next president. And rightfully, like you said, they had another one through Chiwenga that was supposed to do the same thing, basically taking away our democratic right to choose who will govern Zimbabwe. So since independence, we can safely say that there has never been a government by the people and for the people. The people of Zimbabwe have never been afforded the meaningful say to who governs the country. And until we get that right, and until our people get this right, we will never see a prosperous Zimbabwe. Because without democracy, we do not have the basics of, accountability, traceability, and no one is answerable to anybody. And this is why we are seeing corruption is rampant. and everybody basically is doing whatever they want with resources, with basically our livelihood, and nobody is being questioned, including the army itself. It's not questioning why is things this way. So I would say it is now up to us to put our house in order as the citizens. Forget about the army. They have their own agenda, which is not democracy. And we need to find democracy for ourselves. Thank you.
My closing remark will be to remind the people of Zimbabwe that what we need in Zimbabwe is the rule of law. And that can be split into two complementary branches. The first one is that every Zimbabwean must have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. This is not just a right, it's the very essence of good governance. The supporting branch of that is that no one has a divine right to rule the country. We are in this mess because we are stuck with a regime, a party, ZANU-PF, whose leaders believe they have the divine right to rule Zimbabwe. Our friend, when he announced his military coup, it was codenamed Restore Legacy. Basically, all it meant is consolidate their own hold on power. The individuals concerned staged a military coup because they felt their hold on power was under serious threat. Mugabe and a few others had formed a rivalry faction called G40, and they were going to be sidelined. I repeat, no one has the divine right to rule the country. Our commitment should be that the right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful vote must be restored without failure. That is the issue that we should always think about here. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us today, and hope you'll be able to do it again. Remember, it's 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.